loved ones have a right to expect when they check into the Wichita Veterans Hospital. Some patients tell us they were ignored. Former employees say the hospital is fraught with problems.
As part of a 6-month Fact Finder 12 investigation, intensive care experts told us the situation is downright scary. The VA director declined at least a dozen requests for an interview to discuss what we found. But in written responses, VA officials say the hospital takes pride in the care it gives to our nation's veterans. Eyewitness News reporter Liz Collin found several who disagree in this Fact Finder 12 investigation.
Their wars are long over, but their battles are not. The fight now is for better health care at the Wichita VA.
He shouldn't have died.
More than a year later, the Rolfe family is still coming to grips with the sudden death of its father and husband, Neil.
He was a good guy. He loved to hunt, loved his grandkids. And I don't know, I honestly don't think he thought he was going to die when he went in there.
At 62, Neil learned he had colon cancer. After a successful operation at the VA, Neil was told he could leave in a few days.
We had to walk him to and from the bathroom. We had to get him up to walk ourselves. It was just, we were there taking care of him.
It just wasn't a clean place.
Janice says only doctors checked on Neil, not nurses.
That's why Janice Rolfe was hesitant to leave her husband's side during his stay in the hospital. She says otherwise the staff ignored his needs. And the Rolfes aren't the only ones who've complained about the care inside the VA hospital.
At the age of 48, Sean O'Callahan suffered a major heart attack. But recovering, Sean got in the habit of buzzing for more medication to kill his pain. One time, more than an hour passed, and no one ever came.
How are you feeling physically at this point?
Nauseated from the pain, just horribly sick.
That's when Sean unplugged himself and went looking for help. When he got into the hallway, he overheard a nurse and doctor talking about his request.
He said, well, Mr. O'Callahan is just going to have to wait like everybody else.
Another half hour went by before his medicine finally came.
You know, I should have questioned, but I did.
After 7 days in the hospital with her husband, Janice left him alone one night. A cousin went to pick Neil up the next morning to bring him home.
My father had already passed away. They didn't cover him. They didn't shut the door. They sat down and could have carried on a conversation with him, not even realizing that he wasn't there.
Neil's death certificate shows he died at 9:47 that morning. Connor remembers calling to check on her dad sometime after 11 a.m. Connor says a VA nurse bluntly told her that her father was dead.
I mean, there was no compassion.
The VA says Neil died of a blood clot, but the next day, Janice got a phone call from the doctor who did Neil's surgery. He told her Neil shouldn't have died. The doctor says because of what happened, he quit his job and that he'd never again work at a veterans hospital. Fact Finder 12 wanted to know why patients and their families say they were ignored. We asked to see a track record of response times in the ICU. What we found, one hospital director not from the VA called downright scary.
Take a look at this memo. It's a 24-hour test in 2001 of cardiac monitors. It showed one red alarm sounding for as long as 7 hours. The VA says that doesn't mean staff ignored patients. It says the equipment is oversensitive. If something serious happens while the first alarm continues to go off, RNs might not even know it unless they constantly check the printout of the patient's heart rate. The Associate Director of Primary Care writes, no one could know if a new life-threatening arrhythmia occurred.
There's something wrong with the system.
Terry Gray worked at the Wichita VA as a biomedical engineer for 20 years. The VA says nurses pay attention to the monitors because the noise is irritating. But Gray says because of that, consistent alarms were muffled with gauze pads. And that wasn't all.
Then they started unplugging them. And especially at night, because they said it bothered the patients.
When Gray brought his concerns to the hospital director, he was told to mind his own business.
They said it's been handled, stay out of it, and they threatened me with dismissal if I didn't stay out of it.
The VA says there's no proof of alarms being unplugged or covered. Gray's complaints were checked out by the Office of the Inspector General, the agency that oversees care at the VA hospital. It says the hospital passed muster, and that's what families like the Rolfes can't understand. Why do you want to do this interview, Janice?
Well, because of the veterans that are serving overseas now and fighting the war, they need to have a better place.
After that ICU study back in 2001, workers were taught to change the settings on monitors for each individual patient. Doing so cut back on the number of false life-threatening alarms. The VA says no life was ever in danger because of this issue, but that action was taken to improve the overall care within the ICU. Liz Collin, KWCH 12, Eyewitness News.
We took our findings to Congressman